Calgary. All right. I think we'll get rolling here. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Let me kick us off by welcoming you to our office here at Figure Drinker and what I'm sure will be another great program by the CBC Future Leaders Committee. The focus today being on professional development. My name is Sean Dory. I'm the immediate past chair of the Future Leaders Committee of the Chicago Building Congress. And I'm a partner here in our firm's construction and real estate litigation practice group. If you aren't familiar, Figure Drinker is a full-service law firm, 17 offices in the U.S. and a couple abroad in the U.K. and China. There's a few of us here in attendance. I think most with name tags. So if you'd like to know more, just track one of us down. I'd like to acknowledge our current chair, Derek Olenek from Technoelectric, as well as all the other members of the CBC Future Leaders Committee who are in attendance, many of whom you'll be meeting in just a moment. I'd also like to acknowledge and welcome those of you who are not necessarily involved in the Future Leaders Committee, but who are also members of the broader CBC organization. We're certainly glad you're here. If you're not currently a CBC member, we welcome you wholeheartedly anyway. But when you have a chance, please be sure to talk to one of us about the benefits of becoming a CBC member yourself. So we're excited everyone is here for this panel discussion on professional development. But before we jump to the panel, I was asked to let you know about a few other great events CBC has coming up over the next 6 weeks. Some of those include, there's a Top Golf event on April 18th. It's a members networking event in collaboration with BCOE, which is the Black Contractors Owners and Executives Organization. On May 9th, we will have our largest annual event, which is the Merit Awards, held again this year at Morgan Manufacturing, open to members and non-members alike. Likewise, for members and non-members, a brand new event, the CBC's Special Interest Group for Women is hosting a networking event at Haymarket Pub on Randolph Street on May 16th. You can get more information about each of those and register for them at the CBC's website, which is simply chicagobuildingcongress.org. Now, for today's panel, I'd like to introduce our moderator, someone I've known for many years, Joe Cedar. Joe is currently a CBC Vice President and is the Managing Partner of Joseph Cedar Consulting, LLC, where he provides claims consulting services on troubled construction projects. Joe is going to introduce the panel and lead our discussions. Joe, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Everybody can hear me? Yeah, great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We've got a great panel here today, so let's just get right to it. A quick introduction for each of the panelists here. Anne Strain is an associate and project architect with Halliburton Group. She's a recent addition to the CBC Board of Directors, is the outgoing philanthropy chair for the CBC Future Leaders, and also serves on Habitat for Humanity's Women Build Philanthropy. Ryan Adams, right next to me, is a surety and insurance advisor at DSP Insurance Services, an independently owned insurance benefits and surety bonding agency based in Schaumburg, Illinois. Ryan is active throughout the Chicago construction market as a board member of the ASA, that's the Association of Subcontractors and Affiliates, and is also involved with the Chicagoland Roofing Contractors Association. Colin Rube, is a senior engineer at Rass & Johnson Incorporated, where he uses his engineering experience to conduct structural investigations and perform material analyses, often focused on determining failure causation related to a variety of structures and material types, with a special emphasis on existing concrete and pre-stressed concrete construction. After graduating from Illinois State University, Derek Olenek started in the electrical industry as a CAD operator. He is now a vice president and partner at Titan Electric. Derek specializes in design-build projects, project management, estimating, building his team, and relationships throughout the industry. Jeff Rogers, in the middle next to him, is a project executive for Walsh Construction Company, where he is involved in all aspects of projects from client engagement through turnover and occupancy. while being responsible for implementing strategic planning and monitoring the project progress of ongoing projects. Lastly, and certainly not leastly, is Michael Mays, who is a project and business development engineer at Bully and Andrews. Michael at the end. Michael was named a 2023 40 Under 40 recipient by the Naperville Chamber. And when he's not managing projects for Bully and Andrews, he orchestrates music for his music learning platform, Mays Music Center. So we got a really interesting panel for us here today. We have about 40 minutes or so, give or take, of questions, followed by a Q&A session at the end, where hopefully we can get some good questions from the audience. With that, let's jump right into it. So we're going to start, as this is a professional development discussion, we're going to start off talking at least about building and nurturing your network. So Michael, I'm going to start with you. How do you identify and cultivate valuable professional relationships within the construction industry?
Yes, so I have a twofold approach that kind of has worked for me when it comes to kind of building and nurturing your network. But before business aside, you really have to take an authentic and personal approach. I think we're all human, and we all realize when people are trying to be salesy. And oftentimes just the tenacity and the persistence is good, but sometimes you can get not authentic answers from the client that you're trying to reach. So I think by being first authentic and personable, it allows you to build that relationship. And relationships is really what drives your network. And I mean, your network is your net worth. I'm pretty sure everyone's heard that. And so being able to cultivate a strong relationship with whoever you're reaching out to, whether it be a client, a coworker, or even a colleague, that can really have a greater return on investment for that network. So in summary, being authentic and being personable first to build that strong relationship, and whether it be construction or just life at large.
Thanks, Michael. Jeff, you want to add to that?
Yeah, one thing I always say is you work with who you like. And so you want to cultivate those relationships with those around you. And like Michael said, be yourself, be authentic, be friendly. Don't be guarded. We always have kind of a mantra within our company of be curious, ask a lot of questions. We work with a lot of different people in our industry, and your network might start small at first, but talk to them, ask what they're doing, ask what other jobs they're on, ask whatever other experiences they're having, and grow from there. But asking those kinds of questions is really how you grow the network and how you're interested. We all want to be an active listener and understand what others are doing, and that's where your network really grows, is when you have those friendships that last more than talking for 5 minutes at a meeting and never seeing each other again.
Great. Derek, I want to ask you something in particular about building and nurturing your network. Really a two-part question, and I'm going to go to someone else on the panel about these same questions, so get ready for those of you who I haven't called on yet. First of all, it's one thing to make a connection, right? And it's another thing to maintain that connection into something that ends up turning into a business relationship down the road that's valuable. Number one, tell us a little bit about what you found to be successful for turning an introduction into an actual relationship with someone. And then number two, talk a little bit about a challenge that you experienced along the way that ended up turning into a success story.
The first question, taking that introduction and building it onto something greater. I can remember, I've been in the industry for 33 years, so my age is showing. Back in the day, you had business cards, you didn't have LinkedIn, you didn't have all this social networking, which makes it a lot easier, I think, nowadays to really expand your network. You had to go out to these events, you had to meet people, and by going to those events, I would meet, general contractors. I work for electrical subcontractors, so my focus is on the general contractor side to try to bring in business. And meeting the general contractors at these events, such as something like this, or some type of charity event, or whatever it may be. And then over those years, taking that relationship, getting to know the person on a personal level, I think is always an advantage instead of always making it about work. That would be one thing that's really stuck with me over the years is some of my closest relationships have been people I've known for 30 years. I know their families. I've been out to dinners with them. I've been, ball games with them. And in turn, that has led to not only a great relationship, or when I'm retired someday, I'll call these people my friends still, not just on a business level, but we have gone through this journey together and have built many projects along the way. As far as your second question, I going back to, I think it was the second employer I worked with, is probably 15 years, no, more than that, 20 years ago, before I came over to Titan. I knew a gentleman who used to work for Duke Construction, and didn't do much with them, someone else in the company did, but I knew him by name, and he knew who I was. Flash forward about 2 years ago, he since then has changed. He's a vice president at DSI Construction, and I saw their name on a project out by Oak Brook that I thought they were involved in. So via LinkedIn, I reached out to them. Come to find out, they were just doing some earthwork out there, but they had this big project coming up out in Montgomery. Put me in touch with the pre-construction manager over there, Jamie, who also used to work at Duke some 20 years ago, who I knew by name, and just rekindled that relationship just by knowing them from 20 years prior to now. I got awarded this job 20 years later with DSI on a $6 million job out in Montgomery. So, just being persistent and just always keeping in mind those people you've known from 20 years ago. You may not see them, especially a lot of the younger people around here. Those people may come back around 20 years later and could turn out to be something really good.
And thoughts that you might have on this?
Yeah, building off of what Derek was just saying, it's building a relationship that's actually meaningful is a long-term commitment. I mean, Derek planted that seed 20 years ago, and now it's finally blossoming. But as far as, finding people that are easy to talk to and get to know, I tend to, get involved in things that I'm interested in and are passionate about. And chances are other people doing those same things are also interested in it. So you're already starting with the common denominator. So for me personally, that's like the charitable organizations that I participate with, or even with the CBC, the Future Leaders, we have volunteer opportunities that we hold a couple times a year, and these are opportunities that other people that come out to it are also interested in giving back to the community, and it gives you a chance to talk to someone for much longer than 5-10 minutes that you'd get at other type of networking event. You could be making food or packaging meals or building a house, whatever volunteer opportunities that we have. It's, working alongside someone for a much longer period of time, you really get to know them on a better level. And it's much easier to follow up with them and say, hey, you want to go grab coffee? We had a great conversation last week.
Great, thanks. Brian, this one's a little off script. You're going to panel a morning right now as I hear things. I'm going to process them and go a little off of our planned questions. Brian, how do you balance those touch points with your contacts in terms of level of frequency, whether you're checking in to say hello, whether you're recommending getting in touch with coffee? What have you found to be successful for you, because it's different for each person, in terms of maintaining your network to make sure that your relationships don't get stale, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the thing that I notice a lot is you'll see consistency at some of these different associations and events that we're all going to, and that's when you start to notice, hey, I've seen this person, once a month, and maybe that's what translates then into, hey, let's go grab coffee, outside and further talk about business opportunities, or how can we help one another in a working sense. So I think these different associations that I'm sure a lot of us outside of the Chicago Building Congress belong to some others, whether it's a nonprofit or if we're participating in other boards, we have that already built into a lot of these connections that we're seeing. And I think it then depends, on an individual basis, if I check in with somebody twice a year, hey, this is great, we kind of have an understanding of, that value is going to be there. Some people it might be, hey, I'm sending an email once a month to see how things are going, is there anything I can help with? And I think on that point, I know as a few had spoken about in terms of building that relationship, I think the important thing, or at least what I've tried to come to, is that you need to find out what can you provide that's helpful to somebody else. Whether it's, hey, some insight from the industry that I have on the insurance and the surety side. Maybe there's something that would be valuable to all these different connections that I have. How am I sharing that on a regular basis so that those connections that we're building, people start to say, hey, I want to see Brian again, because last time I saw him 2 months ago, he gave me some really great insight on this that then that person was able to provide to their clients and customers. So I think that's also kind of built into that, is that as time goes on, you'll really find out what people are looking for from that frequency, but then also what is that information and that value add that you're providing.
Great, thanks, Brian. Colin, looking to you, can you share an example of how your network helped you overcome a challenge or seize an opportunity in your career?
Sure, yeah. So I guess, in building my network, whether it's an industry organization like CBC here, where we have all different, styles of the construction industry represented in this room, or it's, something that's more up my alley, like concrete construction or concrete repair. You build that from the start, right? The best way to get involved is to get involved early, and I did that. I was encouraged to do that by my employer, and I encourage any people in this room who have young folks in their offices to send them to these organizations, send them there, because this is how they build their network. And early on in my career, I was kind of thrust into an opportunity to be a project manager. We're a small firm, I don't have that many engineers, and the need was there. And so being thrust into that can be overwhelming for some, especially at a young age, coming out of college, and not having that experience in your back pocket. But having been involved in all these organizations, I had that network already kind of built up, or at least a few people that I could, lean on and go and ask. So, what do you do about this and that, or this situation comes up, how do you go about, speaking with the contractor about that, those kinds of things. And that really allowed me to comfortably get into that role that maybe I was too young for, or maybe the imposter syndrome came, and everybody probably in this room has experienced that at one point or another, right? And how do I overcome that anxiety and that fear to establish what I know I can do as a project manager and put that foot in the door. And that's really opened up a lot of opportunities for me to continue as a project manager, having that success, that network that I was allowed to essentially get mentorship from in order to succeed.
Great. It's almost like you knew where I was going next. So, I want to shift a little bit, because you mentioned a couple things here that I thought were interesting. You mentioned you were encouraged by your firm, right? We've been talking about networking a little bit, and I think most people are thinking about it as external networking, people outside of your firm. But there's also, for lack of a better term, internal networking, getting to know and take advantage of the people that are at your firm and creating relationships with those people. And a lot of times the concept of mentorship comes along with that, right? So, Brian, I'm going to start with you. How can young professionals look for mentees in the construction industry? Again, they don't necessarily need to be internal, but it could be internally or externally. How would you recommend people look for that sort of mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, that is something that if the company that you're at doesn't specifically offer a mentor-mentee program, I definitely encourage that, try to start that. At the very first job that I had out of college, I was put into a mentor-mentee relationship, and some of that's challenging where it's, I don't want to meet with this person every week and talk to them about what are my challenges at this new job. But I think that is really formative in having those opportunities to, have somebody that you can talk to and, tell them what you feel is not working or what's going well and how is that impacting what your career trajectory looks like. So if, whether it's in an association like this even, that, hey, if there's somebody that you're speaking to that you say, hey, this person really aligns with what my values are and what types of feedback you might be able to get, this is an area where you could definitely seek it out if it's not something that your company has. So I think you have to look for it, you have to be willing to kind of push to that if it's not something that's kind of specifically presented to you in that mentor-mentee relationship. And I think as our careers move on, I think we need to be willing to, provide that mentorship as well if the opportunity presents itself.
Great, and you want to expand on that a little?
Yeah, so like Brian was saying, there's really two ways to go about mentorship. There's a formal, someone assigns you a mentor, or there's, you organically develop a mentor-mentee relationship with someone. And I was fortunate enough to have that formal mentorship in both high school and college. Both those schools, appointed like a local architect for me to meet with, which was great, and it introduced me to the concept of how mentors can help us. But when I got to the, working environment, that didn't exist. I sought my own mentors, and the people that I have seeked out are people who I aspire to be like. So there's not a lot of women at the top in the architecture field. So, find someone that I can see myself become. That has really helped me.
Michael, what are some of your thoughts on this front?
Yeah, I'm kind of piggybacking off of you, and I think if you don't have that formal program, I think of mentorship, I don't want to really say dating, but using it for lack of a better word at the present moment, but like being observant. If there's a leader at the company that you see how they're hardworking, or you like how they handle certain situations, or you see that they're a leader or executive leadership, seeing what their interests are, because then that can engage the formal acts for mentorship. Because think about it, again, it's a relationship. So if you just close your eyes and say, okay, I want you to be my mentor because you are, vice president of this organization or vice president of this department, and then you guys have different kind of leadership styles, or you have different interests, it's going to be hard to kind of cultivate that relationship. So I would encourage you, if you don't have a formal mentorship program, but you're looking to gain a mentor within your organization, just be observant. Go out for coffee sometime, or chat at the kitchenette. I know everybody in here drinks coffee, I think. So when you're at the kitchenette and you're trying to, get that refill on coffee, like, hey, how was your weekend? See things that they like to do, because then that can help gauge if you want to make that formal mentorship request. I think, for example, for me, kind of really started off in college. I was at North Central College. I was a class president, and it was actually a guy who's vice president, Mike Hudson. And that actually is kind of the path that got me into Bullion Andrews. He was over vice president of buildings and grounds, and I heard that the college was kind of going to start building this health and science building. And so I seen Mr. Hudson. He was very involved with construction. He was very hardworking. Even though he was the vice president, he took a very he had a very servanthood heart. And so that was, all characteristics that I, saw in him, and I would take that I had those same characteristics. And then he ended up, taking me on board, teaching me the ropes, because eventually we wanted to build a building for the music center. And so he was like, hey, I'll teach you this. And it actually ended up turning into a mentorship program. internship program with Bullion Andrews, and I actually got to construct a health science center as a student at North Central College, but then also working with Bully. So it's a simple conversation of, having similar characteristics helped me pick a mentor that ultimately changed my trajectory in my career and even my success at North Central College.
Yeah, so I think an interesting takeaway that I got from Ann and Michael's answer is, while there might be companies that have existing mentorship programs, a lot of times they're directed by the company, right? And the assignments that are made, they might be good in certain people's eyes, but they're not driven by the mentee, by the person who's getting the feedback and that relationship. And both of you talked about taking the initiative to step outside of that, formal structure and take the steps yourselves to figure out who would be a good mentor for you and figure out the right people and cultivate that relationship yourself. So it's a little bit more of a proactive effort on your part, but it seems like it's paid significant dividends for both of you. And I'm gonna ask a follow-up question to that. Generally speaking, there might be a couple of exceptions, but when people have reached out to others to try and initiate this type of mentor-mentee relationship, have they been shot down and been told no, or are people typically responsive to it and willing to help you out? I'll address that to everybody.
I don't think you have to formally ask for someone to be your mentor. Just carry on and learn from them.
Yeah. Colin, were you gonna say something?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess in my experience, if you're establishing that relationship with this mentor type of person, you're already networking with them, whether that's outside of your company structure or whatever, and it's more of a natural relationship. It's not something that needs to be formalized. It's a collaborative effort. We're talking as two people, and somebody is looking up to another person for guidance. And as a mentee, you have to bring something to the table too. So what is that collaborative effort that you're going to offer that mentor? And once that's established, it's very natural. It's not something that needs to be asked.
We're gonna pivot a little bit from here, and Jeff, I'm gonna come to you for this question. Can you take a little bit of an opportunity, as I call this category questions of reflections, right? Taking a look back on your career. There are highs and there are lows during anyone's career. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've run into over the course of your career and how you responded to those challenges and were able to overcome those to where you are today?
Thanks, Joe. I think a lot of it is we all have tough jobs. We all have difficult situations that we're in, and really what I found is where you find your really good network is the ones you reach out to when you're struggling and having, let's say, job issues or even personal issues. I can look back maybe 15 years ago for a project I was on that was a really, really difficult project. It was a tough owner, it was a tough job, it was something new to me. I reached out to, it was actually a senior manager of one of my subcontractors to help understand the project and understand what I didn't know at that time, what we were having problems with. It was a great experience because I went outside of my comfort zone for something that was completely different than I was used to. A different industry, different set of people to deal with, but I learned that you gotta get out of your comfort zone for a lot of these things, and you'll be amazed at how that expands things when you're doing that. We all get focused on our job sometimes, and if you can get outside of that and get outside of your comfort zone, and whether it's a mentor or whether it's on a project or just on a personal relationship, to get something different and get a different perspective, you learn a lot from it, but you'll see your network expand as well. I still deal with those people 15 years later, and Derek can attest to this, that the industry in Chicago, especially the construction and the AE industry, is very big but very small. I work with the same people that when I started 20 some years ago, I still run into the same people. So being able to have that outreach to when you have a difficult problem, find somebody who you think can have a solution. Maybe it's not your boss or somebody within your group even, or your company, but have that uncomfortable conversation with somebody to try to learn, and it will not only professionally let you grow, but it'll expand your network to somewhere that you may not have expected to deal with or learn about. And for me, 15 years later, I still have dividends coming back from it.
Thanks, Jeff. Derek, what about you? Challenge or low point that you experienced during your career and how you've been able to overcome it and grow from that point?
Yeah, I would say if you're not challenging yourself every day, or you're living in a state of being comfortable, then you're not growing. And yeah, over 30 years, it's a roller coaster. I'm sure every industry is. It's not always going to be roses. You're going to have difficult times, and some of those times may just be personal, may not even be job related. But you still need to go to your job every day. You still need to get through no matter what you may be struggling with. And as far as a mentor goes, it's I think finding someone you could go to and you could trust. And I know times that when I was going through difficult times, whether personal or on a project, there was one gentleman I knew within our office I could always go to in confidence that that's where it would stay, and henceforth he's one of the mentors that I always looked up to. And I want to, as I've gotten older now, I have a team of young individuals under me. You know, I too, like we were saying, we never had a mentorship program. I always gravitated to those mentors. So yeah, it's good to have someone you go to who you can trust, who can help you through those difficult times, whether personal or within your everyday task of a difficult job, like Jeff stated, and I've been through many of them, to help you through those times. So that's, I would react to that.
Thanks, Derek. We're going to shift a little bit to work-life balance. I feel like this is something that's been talked a lot about over the last couple of years in particular, but as people have said already on this panel, the construction industry is a challenging industry. It in a variety of different ways. It can use up a lot of someone's bandwidth if they're not careful. Michael, starting with you, how do you prioritize that work-life balance?
Yeah, I first believe it starts with recognizing that, we're gonna have hard days, we're gonna have long days sometimes. But I kind of use 3 things to help me get through that. And that's time flexing, recognizing capacity versus time, and then leveraging the power of no, and relating to more so a need versus a want. So first of all, kind of time flexing, we know we have the hard days, you might have a 12-hour day, you might have a 10-hour day, but if you have flexibility then later in the week to maybe, leave a little bit earlier or come in a little bit late to make up for the extra time, one thing that does is it gives you a little bit of time to recharge, versus you're not, you can have those days you be past 5 and you're burnt out, you're just trying to get the last thing done. Taking that step back to either leave and come back refreshed the next day helps, or time flexing the next day to be able to say, okay, I was in the office until 8 o'clock at night, I'm gonna sleep in a little bit till 10, if your schedule can allow. And then capacity versus time. And this works in tandem with kind of the power no a little bit, because sometimes we have the time to do something, but we don't necessarily have the capacity, whether that be mental capacity or just, the physical capacity to get it done. And so realizing sometimes you may have time to get something done, but you may already have exerted a lot of mental capacity, and then that's when you leverage the power of no. And using something like the power of no is honestly, it's paid off for me more than, saying yes. Whether that be a new project that you're taking on, or someone trying to ask you to take on a little bit something extra, you'd rather say no and, not do it all versus say yes, and then you're already at your, bandwidth, and then it falls through. I mean, as a leader at the Music Center, I'd rather my team, tell me, hey, I really don't have the capacity to do this. And then, we can reassign someone else to, take over that task versus saying, okay, hey, I can do this. And then, it doesn't get done. You know, that's more stressful. And then recognizing this when it comes to work, if you have your task list, is this something that needs to get done today, or is this something I would like to get done today? When you can prioritize something that needs to get done that day versus something you're just trying to get ahead of, then that can help you say like, okay, well I can log off because this is something that's not necessarily due until Wednesday, or this is not due until the end of the month. Because sometimes when you get a lot of things thrown at you, everything seems like a need to get done because you're trying to cross it off the list. But truth be told, sometimes it's not a need and it's more of a want, just so you don't have to worry about it. And so when you can balance kind of those things, time flexing, capacity versus time, and then a need versus want, all leveraging the power of no, I think those are some tactics that I've used to be able to be successful with that.
Sort of like textbook definition, nice terminology. And you want to expand on that or identify some things that work for you?
Well, I would say first, like, prioritize by setting goals for yourself. What are you trying to achieve professionally? And then, focus on what is important to you. And that may change over time. Like right now, I have a young child, so sometimes I have to say, my family is really important right now. She's not going to be young for very long, but the projects are always going to be coming across my desk. Chances are, there's someone at the office that can help me meet a project deadline if I have a family commitment. So don't be afraid to ask for help if you feel overloaded. That helps you balance everything.
Eric?
Yeah, those are probably two of the hardest things I have a hard time with. Number one is asking for help, and number two, saying no. But at the same time, again, when I first came into the industry, we had fax machines, we had to print out drawings, and nowadays with social media and the internet and getting multiple drawings just emailed to you, everything is happening in all our lives so quickly that trying to keep up with it is basically impossible. So I would say prioritize what's most important to you. Take care of yourself first, because if that means exercising, that's what I like to try to do. I like to try to exercise every day. If it's running or riding my bike, it's my release. And there has been times where I've had such a really tough day that I'm like, I can't wait to get home and get on the bike and go for like a 30-mile ride and just forget about everything. So keep yourself first, because at the end of the day, if you're not here, all that other stuff doesn't even matter. So yeah, take care of yourself. Don't overwhelm yourself. Again, I find myself looking at my email 24 hours a day, which I know is wrong and it's a bad habit I have. But so I struggle with that even still today. But I'm trying to get better as I get older, because I know my kids need me, my wife needs me, my company needs me. So you just got to prioritize and like you said, learn to say no if it's too much. If it's just a want, someone calling you and you got something that's really important that your boss wants you to get done, but then you have a customer calling you for a job that's like out in Idaho that they're just calling you for a check number and they don't even, you're not even going to get the job. Take care of what's most important first, then maybe get to that call if you can by the end of the day.
And biking is not necessarily the answer for everybody. It's definitely not for me. That sounds like my nightmare. We'll have a couple of questions before we do a wrap-up question for everyone. So, Brian and Jeff, this is going to be for you. It's about constructive feedback and communication. It ties in a little bit with the mentorship conversation we were having earlier. But what advice or suggestions do you have regarding effectively receiving feedback from your colleagues or clients?
I'll start real quick, because I've had, everybody has bosses, subordinates, I've been through a lot of reviews. As receiving feedback, a lot's gotta be open. Some of my hardest reviews I've been in or have conducted is giving constructive criticism. But we all want to be better, and we all need to be open to being better. I found that if I can listen to what I'm doing well, but really ask the question of what can I do better, and truly listen, it's a big difference. Nobody wants to get yelled at, nobody wants to be told they're doing a bad job, But if you can understand where maybe some of your shortcomings are and take it and turn it into a positive, where maybe you go and you find somebody in your company that does it really well and you learn how they do it better. Or maybe it's just a skill that you can go and find with a group or with some training and better yourself. We're all better if we can expand those things. And if you're not open to hearing that feedback, it's really hard to get better.
And I would just build on that, where I think the default a lot of times is to assume that it's personal feedback, or that it's, hey, it's directed intentionally at me. And I think we have to shift away from that, because maybe it's somebody just giving direct feedback that says, hey, here's a way that I think you can get better, or you could improve on this process, whatever it might be. And it's hard to get out of that mindset, whether it's coming from a peer, whether it's coming from a client or a manager. And I think that's very important from the feedback perception. And then I think also from when giving feedback, that's the other thing too. There's a great book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. If anybody's ever read it, it's about giving feedback that's radically candid. And I think that's important to do of, hey, there's a reason that I'm telling you these things of why there's a potential for improvement, and it's with compassion that you're giving that feedback. So I think on both sides of it is to understand that most of the time it's not personal when you're getting feedback. In the same way, if you're giving somebody feedback, it cannot be personal, but it's, hey, here's some way that I want you to improve.
Great, thanks, Brian. We're gonna have a close-up question now. Give each of the panelists, as well as myself, an opportunity to touch on this one. And really, it's if there was one takeaway that you wanted to emphasize from today's conversation, whether it's something that we've already discussed and you want to re-emphasize it, or something that we haven't yet touched on, what would it be? And Michael, we'll start with you and we'll work our way down.
In closing, I would say the importance of humility, service, and confidence. And the only reason I say that, quick story, I'd be like 2 seconds. Moved in from Indiana, and I moved into Naperville, and I was actually working at Panera, still in high school. I was serving, and didn't want to go to college, but ended up serving one of the board of trustees at North Central College. Had no idea. And that relationship turned into, which now they're my godparents, but they were also very influential people in Naperville. And that turned my whole trajectory around. And it was one of those things, there wasn't a fancy, couple, very much older and very simple. But, because, being in that position of service and, being humble and, treating everyone, my mom always told me, you treat the CEO with the same respect that you treat the janitor with. And so just continuing to have that mindset really opened a lot of doors. So I would just say, make sure we stay, no matter how high you get, stay humble, always have a heart of service. And with the confidence. I think sometimes people think, when you're, in service, it's always be a little shy or push back. But no, you can be of service and still be confident in who you are all at the same time. So those are my 3. Thank you.
So I guess what I would say you guys should take away from this, and this is a professional development panel, right? Is the best way to improve your network, the best way to continuously learn, lifelong learning, is to get involved. What do you like to do? I like concrete. Some people might not, but I'm involved in ACI and ICRI from a very young age, going back into college, being on the concrete canoe team and all that fun stuff. But continuing that and continuing to learn from all of these professionals that have been in these organizations for several years, and not only to be involved but to participate. That's the best way to get your foot in the door, for people to recognize you, those that are on committee chairs that you want to contribute to, that once they see your involvement, your passion for whatever it may be, they will continue to see you each and every time that you show up and participate, and eventually those doors will open. So, get involved, participate, and that's going to open a lot of doors.
mine's pretty easy. Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and call somebody. We do too many emails, too many LinkedIn blasts, too much electronic communication with texts. You don't really know someone unless you're talking to them on the phone. You can't hear inflection in a text. You can't understand things if you're emailing sometimes, and you can take it the wrong way. Pick up the phone. That's where you really get your good relationships with people, where you hear things, you hear things in the industry that you never would have if you texted somebody or emailed them. People will appreciate it. I know we're all busy, and I'm as bad as anybody of trying to do the same thing. But it really is important in today's industries to pick up the phone and call someone.
I think my biggest takeaway today is if you want to grow in your career, then take initiative. Be curious, ask questions, and seek new opportunities.
Bad thing about going near the end is everyone kind of hit on what I was gonna say. But yeah, like Ann said, I would say, go to these events, continue to build your network. If you meet one person at this event today, that was a success. You don't have to meet everyone in here, and keep doing that. And over your career, over your journey, you will continue to succeed. And be extraordinary, because you don't want to just be, you need to do the extra, but you could do it in a way that you find common interests with your peers that will help you grow, because they want to grow just as much as you do. And forming those relationships, like I said earlier, some 20, 30 years ago, some of my best friends, they're VPs of companies now, like Jeff Rogers, that I could go to, and we could go to a game together, and it's more about just being together at that point. We've known each other for 30 years, than it is about trying to get the next project. But he also knows he could call on me if he needs something, and I'd be there for him. So yeah, build that trust within the peers you associate yourself with, and continue to go to these events, because if you're just doing your 8 to 5 or whatever it is and going home and not doing the extra, you're going to be left behind. Not to sound too callous, but it's kind of the way of the world.
I thought the takeaway was ride a bicycle.
I'm not that cool.
Of all these things that have been said, I think in any of it, we need to be willing to embrace the challenge or the discomfort of going and talking to somebody that we don't know, asking somebody that we want to be our mentor, asking for feedback that we know is going to be difficult, and then maybe pushing through that of saying, hey, I need to improve upon these few things. So I think being willing to embrace that challenge is key.
Great. I think mine would be a little twofold, and it's been touched on a little bit already. The first is take the initiative, right? We talked a little bit about how some companies might have existing mentor programs.